And it just is emblematic that this is a process that is obsessively focused on what adults want. And it's always the children who lose.
Women are currently being erased in culture, and I want to amplify their voices and share their stories. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This is a Woman podcast. Today's episode is so good. Katy Faust is the guest, and she's a firecracker. She is doing amazing work, and we dive into all things surrogacy, IVF, and what's going on in society and what's happening to children, because we have turned into a culture where the feelings and the wants of adults are more important than the needs of children. So a little bit about who Katy Faust is. Well, she is the founder and president of Them Before Us. If you have not heard of Them Before Us, we're going to talk about it towards the end of the episode, but also go online to thembeforeus.com to check it out. And so Katy Faust, the founder and president of Them Before Us, a global movement that defends children's rights to their mother and father. She publishes, speaks, and testifies widely on why marriage and family are matters of justice for children. Her articles have appeared in Newsweek, USA Today, The Federalist, Public Discourse, World Magazine, The Daily Signal, The Washington Examiner, The American Mind, and The American Conservative. She's on the advisory board for the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, and Katy helped design the teen edition of CanaVox, which studies sex, marriage, and relationships from a natural law perspective. She details her philosophy of worldview transmission in her book, Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City. She also has a new book coming out this September. It's going to be ready for pre-order in June. We talk about that towards the end of the podcast, but once it's ready for pre-order, I'll let you guys know. But Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City is her current book. And she and her pastor husband are raising their 4 children in Seattle. So without further ado, I just want to dive right into this with you guys. It is amazing. If you are listening, go ahead and also tune in on YouTube. We play a couple of videos so that way you guys can see it, but we explain what the videos are. So if you're listening, don't worry, you won't miss out too much. But with that, Katy Faust. Well, hello, Katy, and welcome to This is a Woman podcast. We are so excited to have you on, especially just with the crazy times. The word surrogacy, it has been popping up like crazy. It is also a word I think a lot of people don't understand. And as I kind of told the guests in the intro, everything you're doing and with Them Before Us, surrogacy has been a topic you've been focusing on. So before we dive into all the nitty gritty, can you just explain to the listeners what even surrogacy is?
Yep. This is where we have to begin, because I think that a lot of us have a misconception about surrogacy for a couple reasons. Number one, we are still sort of locked into this narrative about surrogacy that honestly, big fertility, I didn't coin the phrase big fertility, but that is accurately what we're talking about here. We're talking about one of the most lucrative wings of the medical industry that is largely unregulated and completely profit-driven. Very few oversight standards, even just requirements for reporting. I mean, everything about this is just for making bank for doctors and fertility clinics. And so this narrative that big fertility has taken advantage of is that surrogacy is just about a woman helping her infertile sister have a baby after she had uterine cancer. And there's no money that changes hands. And it's all just like, there's no exploitation. The child goes home to their genetic mother and father. This is just a way to help people struggling with infertility. Okay, so that is sort of the narrative we've been sold. And then interestingly, there's even some confusion among the right and among Christians when you think about biblically what surrogacy is. And they'll say, well, wasn't like the patriarchs, didn't they use surrogates? And was Mary a surrogate for Jesus? And surrogacy is not explicitly condemned in Scripture. In fact, maybe it was actually permitted or used in Scripture. And so maybe there isn't an open and shut case about how we should think about surrogacy. And so I think that that the big fertility has taken advantage of some of that confusion and honestly, some of the good-heartedness that we have for people that are struggling and suffering with longing to have children who would be wonderful parents who are finding some kind of biological roadblock. So let's talk about what surrogacy really is. And now I am going to look at it not from the perspective of this is what the adults really want. Either the same-sex attracted adult who really would like to be a father and probably would be a wonderful father, but he doesn't have a womb. He's not in a relationship with somebody that has a womb, or from the infertile heterosexual couple that maybe did have the uterus removed or whatever. I'm not going to look at this from the perspective of the adults. I am looking at this from the perspective of the child, because when it comes to any social issue, when it comes to any political issue, Christians should be primarily concerned with the rights and well-being of children. So I am going to talk to you about what surrogacy is from the child's perspective. And very simply, surrogacy splices what should be one woman, mother, into 3 purchasable and optional women. The first mother is the genetic mother. This is the woman that contributes the egg. This woman gives half of the child's biological identity. The child would not exist without her. And this woman, in the case of surrogacy, sometimes may come from the woman who is going to take the baby home and raise them. Very often it comes from an egg donor catalog where you are purchasing a child's genetic mother to be created in a lab and then inserted in the surrogate. The second mother is the birth mother. This is the woman that carries the child for 9.5 months. This is the only person the child knows for the first portion of their development. This is the woman, the person that the baby is attached to at the moment of birth. And statistically, and from research, is the person that lowers babies' cortisol levels and stress levels. This is the woman to whom children have already bonded. And this is the woman that many adoptees would say resulted in a primal wound when they lost that woman the day that they were born. It is not inconsequential, this bond with your birth mother. And then finally, the third mother is the social mother, the woman that kisses the boo-boos every day as the child grows, that showers the child with distinctly feminine love, that maximizes their development in the ways that they complement the father in the home by doing things that are very, very different but very necessary as the child grows all through their life. So from the child's perspective, none of these 3 mothers are optional. Children need all of them. Surrogacy permits you to sort of a la carte style decide which kind of mother do you want, which do you not have, which do you need to rent or pay for, which one are you going to exclude from the child's life completely. From the child's perspective, if this woman, mother, is not found, if all 3 of these women are not found in the same woman, the child is going to experience loss. Now, sometimes in our tragic, broken world, children lose their mothers. But we don't incentivize, endorse, and promote it. We mourn mother loss. And in some situations where a parent cannot or will not choose to conform their lives to the rights of the child, we redeem that loss through adoption. But that's not what surrogacy is. Surrogacy is about intentionally inflicting mother loss on children because some adult wants it that way.
I think that's such an important thing to focus on. And you briefly touched on that same separation and adoption. A lot of people will say, well, what's the difference between adoption and surrogacy? And I think that last line you said really put it that way. It's intentional. When it's adoption, a child is already here. A child was brought into the world, and we are now looking for a mother and a father for it versus that intentional separation. Another thing with surrogacy, there are a lot of people here today because of surrogacy. And I think this can become a touchy topic. And I've heard you in the past just at different speaking engagements do such a great job speaking to those that are here today and making sure that they know they are valued and loved and deserve to be here, and they aren't any less because they came from surrogacy, but that this is an issue we still need to face and be honest about the brutal realities of it. And something we're seeing happen in California, and this happened in other states, is they're actually redefining and trying to redefine the definition of infertility to be a single person. Do you think that could maybe be a push for surrogacy and to have better access to that? Or why do you think that is being done?
Well, this reveals what surrogacy really is. Surrogacy is not about babies. Surrogacy is about on-demand designer babies shipped worldwide to any adult that has the money and means to acquire them. This is incredibly different from adoption, which functions as an institution centered around the well-being of children. This is surrogacy, and big fertility is a marketplace centered around the desires of adults. There are children that are here because of surrogacy. We don't know exactly how many, because big fertility doesn't have any requirements to track or share or record what's happening to these babies, either the ones that never make it into the womb or the ones that are transferred into someone's uterus and then taken home by what is very often an unrelated adult and then taken across borders, which is functionally child trafficking. And so when we talk about the people that are here, we also need to address the children that are not here. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is surrogacy almost always involves IVF. And when you're talking about IVF, and, you know, I did a conversation with California Family Council about IVF when all of this was kind of coming to the forefront early this spring, and really how IVF is not a pro-life technology. Only 2 to 7% of babies created through IVF are going to be born alive. The vast majority are going to be deselected, degraded out of existence, frozen, donated to research, determined to be the wrong sex, have the wrong eye color, the wrong hair color. They won't survive the thaw. They won't survive the transfer. They might be selectively reduced in the womb because there's too many children or if the child's not developing well. The bottom line is that if you do meet somebody who was born through surrogacy, or if you do meet somebody who was born through IVF, they're one of the very lucky few that made it out alive. So we can say, we are so grateful for your life. We are so grateful that you are alive. You have worth and dignity. And that's exactly why we oppose surrogacy and the vast majority of IVF, because we are dignifying children by saying you should not be able to manufacture, process, purchase, and then ship them across the world to people that have never undergone any kind of screening or background check like adopted parents typically do, almost always do, mandated to do. And so this is actually a child dignifying position, one where you can say it's because we're grateful that you're alive that we oppose these technologies that destroy more embryonic life every year than Planned Parenthood does. So it's important that we get this right. We can value and treasure the children that do come about through these technologies and say all the other babies that were destroyed through this process deserve the same kind of protection.
Absolutely. And touching kind of on IVF, I do want to just play a quick video clip of this. Really shows the reality of this is a pro-adult wants over children's needs. And maybe we can kind of get your reaction to this video, but we'll check it out real quick.
This is how we chose our beautiful egg donor. So we wanted her to have lovely big eyes. I wanted her to have really thick hair because I've had 2 hair transplants. I wanted her to have a really wide, nice smile and just look like a kind person. Yeah, and we wanted her to be creative because we love the arts. Yeah. So how it works is you join up with an egg donor agency and you literally go through thousands. That's what Stuart did. That's what I did. I went through thousands. I shortlisted them, sent them to Francis and let him decide. And then I had 3 or 4 in front of me, and then we had a few Zoom calls with the ones that we liked, and then the first egg donor let us down, fuming. So second egg donor let us down, fuming. And then by the third, we literally found her, and I was like, oh, she's incredible. And when we got on the Zoom call, we were like, be calm, play it down, beautiful. Don't be too keen. And luckily, she said yes, and this is the result. Yeah. He's looking at his hands.
So for those of you that are just tuning in via audio, you can always go watch our YouTube clips to see the video, but it was 2 men standing there holding probably a 1-year-old or less baby, talking about how this baby came to be and all the things that they chose. So Katy, can we kind of get your thoughts on what's going on there?
Well, we don't know exactly how many babies are created through IVF every year. Because nobody's keeping track. This isn't adoption where we know the child before and after, and we survey how they're doing post-placement. Estimates range from like 30 to 60,000 children who are created through egg or sperm donation every year, maybe 3,000 that are created through surrogacy. But what we see is that IVF does not just threaten children's right to life, which 92 to 97% of the procedures do, but IVF also threatens children's right to their mother and father. So these 2 men created an intentionally motherless child. They purchased the child from an egg donor catalog. that child is not going to have, at minimum, a daily relationship. It sounds like maybe they will know the identity of their mother, but that's just crumbs. Children don't need to know the identity of their mother. They need to be loved, cherished, kissed, hugged, nurtured every day of their life by their mother. So these two men separated children from their genetic mother, which statistically is going to increase the risk that the child is going to suffer identity struggles like many other children created through sperm and egg donation. And then they hired a surrogate. They rented the womb of another woman for 9.5 months. And then they severed the baby's bond with their birth mother, which will increase the likelihood that the child is going to deal with attachment and bonding issues throughout the baby's life. And they're starving the child, raising the child in a completely motherless home. So the child very often, well, I shouldn't say very often. Because I do this work, people will send me screenshots from like LGBT groups or like two dad like group chats where they'll say, oh, my child did the thing this morning. My 3 or 4-year-old came home from daycare and started calling me and everybody else mommy. And nobody was telling the baby that they needed a mommy. It's just something that arises in children naturally. Children instinctively long for male and female love. And that two-dad household is going to starve children of something that they crave, are made for, and have a natural right to. So that shows you sort of the version of surrogacy where the child loses all three mothers, separated from the genetic mother, severed from the birth mother, and starved of a social mother every day of their life.
And that's something we're seeing happen more so today, where it is a child going to a two-mother household or a two-father household. And I know that's something you do a lot of staying up on, talking about the importance of the mother and the father. And some people will say, well, I had two moms, but one was kind of more of the manlier mom, or was doing more of the guy stuff, and one was more of the mom. So doesn't that work? Or I had two fathers, but one kind of was more of a feminine father. And so doesn't that work? Didn't he cover that motherly role? I would just love to dive into that. I think there's a lot of confusion on that right now.
Yeah, good. And this is exactly why states like California are seeking to redefine infertility. Because now that we have passed gay marriage, I mean, these things are directly connected. When you make husbands and wives optional in marriage, mothers and fathers become optional in parenting. Now it's a matter of discrimination if the state does not subsidize single and double mothers or single and double fathers to procure children that will be deprived of one or both of their biological parents. Now, that's harmful to kids, not just because many of them die in the process, not just because they're being commodified, where these two men very clearly, revealed how they shopped and designed their child through the purchase of the egg, quote unquote, donor. Not just because the child is going to suffer the identity struggles of being separated from one biological parent, but they will suffer this mother hunger or this father hunger. And that's just naturally what children experience when they are raised apart from without a mother or father figure. And, I used to run a group chat for kids with two moms. I'll tell you what, if there's anybody that's in the closet right now, it's kids who were raised by LGBT parents who express pain about their upbringing. I mean, these kids can't talk to anybody. Even when they go to therapists and say, gosh, I really long to have a dad like my friends did. Even the therapist will often say, you should be so grateful to have two moms. And so most of the time, these kids can't talk to anybody. So we had this group chat of maybe 9 to 10 kids with two moms. We didn't have any two father parents in that group chat. But very, very often, we did have this conversation one time where I said, did any of you guys feel like one of your mothers met your need for a father? And I'd say like 4 or 5 of them had, in their own words, they would say, well, I had a more butch mom and I had a more femme mom. I had a mom that was stockier, buzzed haircut, wore like oversized t-shirts, liked to work on cars, filled the traditional masculine role. And then I had my femme mom who was hyper feminine, loved to cook, wore dresses, had long hair. And I said, well, for any of you guys, did the butch mom fulfill your need for a father? And they would say no. Like, I still long to be loved by a man. It wasn't enough to have a mom that presented more masculine. I actually wanted to be loved by a man. And so some of them found a way to be loved by men through a coach or a grandfather figure. And some of them found the way to be loved by men in very unhealthy ways, where they were getting male affection from sources that did not have their best interest in mind.
And so we've kind of gone over, and I love how you kicked it off with saying we're going to look at it from the child's point of view. I think something a lot of Christians still struggle with today. What do you do, though, for that wife and husband that have been married for 10, 12 years? They're following everything the Lord is putting before them. They're praying. They are just struggling with infertility, and they feel that IVF and surrogacy is their only option left. Again, I think there's a lack of awareness about the realities, and some of the realities you've already dove into about what IVF and surrogacy really do and the harms that come from it. But do you find those stories where they say, well, I found a doctor and they're only going to take a certain amount of sperm and eggs and we're going to implant them all, and if I get pregnant with all 5, then I get pregnant with all 5? And is there any way you can see this being done morally?
It's very challenging because, well, first of all, for the couple struggling with infertility, my heart goes out to you. I mean, my friends who have dealt with infertility talk about it as like the worst breakup that you've experienced month after month after month after month, right? Where your hopes are so high and then the pain is so sharp. And so I'm never going to diminish the kind of pain and suffering that infertile couples are facing, especially the ones that are they're longing for something that is good and right. The challenge is, just because an adult wants something, even if they want something that is virtuous, it never justifies victimizing or violating children's actual rights. And so a lot of people ask me, well, can't I do this in a way that honors children's right to life and right to their mother and father? And the answer is, there's ways to do this without destroying embryos, and there's ways to do it without destroying children's right to their mother and father. But you will, A, probably won't be able to afford it. And B, you will fight your fertility clinic and your own fertility doctor if you're going to honor every life that is created. They are going to encourage you to discard and donate to research the subpar embryos. They're going to tell you this child isn't viable, this embryo isn't viable. And then you're going to have to say, well, is it or is it not? Or is this fertility clinic giving me counsel that is going to make sure that their implantation and live birth rates doesn't drop because I want to honor my pro-life convictions? And very often people don't even have the money for this. I mean, this is a very cost prohibitive approach, because the truth is you would have to do this by creating only the number of embryos that you intend to immediately implant right away. If a child goes into a freezer, there's a good chance they're never coming out. It is immoral to freeze babies. It's immoral to freeze children. That's really what we're doing here. And so what this means is you would have to create the number of embryos using only your egg, your husband's sperm, that you're willing to immediately implant without doing any kind of genetic testing, any kind of sex selection, any kind of screening. And then you are willing to take whatever implants. And if you implant 2 and both of them twin, now you're carrying quadruplets. And are you willing to go ahead with that, what is now a vastly higher risk pregnancy, which is, IVF on its own is a high risk pregnancy. Surrogacy is a high risk, even more high risk pregnancy. Carrying multiples is a much higher risk pregnancy. And so now what are you going to do in that situation? I mean, the reality is that approaching IVF and especially surrogacy in a way that is pro-life is almost never done because it's cost prohibitive. You would have to have, honestly, unlimited amounts of money to continue pursuing possibilities that have very, very low success rates, especially the older that you get. And so sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is I'm going to have to seek the Lord about fulfilling my longing for motherhood or parenthood in ways where I am shouldering the load, where I am seeking to mend a child's wound rather than inflicting a wound on a child. And that's a hard message. But the truth is that you're not special. Almost every adult at some point is going to have to ask the question, who's going to do the hard thing here? Is it going to be me, or is it going to be the child? This is the same question that people in struggling marriages need to ask. My marriage is so frustrating. It's been so hard for so long. What am I going to do? Am I going to escape by getting a no-fault divorce and then force my children to live in split homes and split worlds for the rest of their life? Or am I going to do the hard thing? Or my husband and I going to do the hard thing? It's the same thing with somebody who's single and longs to be married. Who's going to do the hard thing there? You, by working to find the right spouse, and in the meantime, being patient and showering your maternal or your paternal love on children that need it? Or are you going to go down to the sperm bank or go down to the surrogate, agency and procure a child that's going to be motherless or fatherless? I mean, what about somebody that experiences same-sex attraction? I mean, are they going to form their family in a way that honors their own romantic inclinations? Or if they have children, will they conform to the child's right to be known and loved by their mother and father every day? So this worldview of prioritizing children before adults, it actually there's no exemptions. Every adult is going to have to sacrifice at some point. No adult gets a pass. Everybody, single, married, gay, straight, fertile, and infertile, must conform to children's right to life and right to their mother and father. And any other pathway is an injustice.
That, like, mic drop right there. It's just the reality of it. And I think this is something that we just thought the whole surrogacy thing, the IVF, I feel like used to just think this was a Hollywood thing. We've seen all the Hollywood stars and their surrogates. We saw Chrissy Teigen, she had a surrogate while she was also pregnant at the same time. I've seen stuff that Paris Hilton, when she had a surrogate, she would wear a fake pregnancy belly so she could still kind of feel like she was pregnant. I was reading up Anderson Cooper. He's now done 2 surrogate children with his ex-gay partner, but now just best friend. And I think this is something that we've lost, that this is actually happening not just in Hollywood, but it's happening to normal children, normal families.
Yeah, and you can look at all of those different situations and you actually see the very egregious victimization of children that goes on. Paris Hilton, she made 20 male embryos. She had 20 male embryos, but she kept waiting and kept repeating the process until she got a girl. What's going to happen to those 20 boys? I don't think she'll donate them to anyone else. They'll probably spend their life in a freezer and then maybe get donated to research. Chrissy Teigen, she, talked about how much she mourned the loss of her previous child. Like, she was so bonded to this baby that she only carried for, I think, like 5 months. And then she commissioned a child that was going to have to lose that very, very same bond with a woman because she wanted a baby. And then you look at Anderson Cooper. He talks about how much his mother meant to him and like how close he was to his mother. And yet he has created 2 intentionally motherless children who will never be able to have the kind of bond that he says was one of the most important and formative relationships of his life. I mean, the adult selfishness is so on display in all 3 of these celebrity cases. And it just is emblematic that this is a process that is obsessively focused on what adults want. And it's always the children who lose.
I have another video clip that's it was going viral on X or Twitter, and I want to play it because I think it perfectly brings together what you just said. You really see in this video what the child loses. Again, if you're only listening on Spotify, you'll be able to hear it, but go to the YouTube to check it out. But there's no better way to show the harms this does to a baby than this video.
Oh no, I put it back on her. I know, but her brother has that cross. Oh, he went there. Oh, right. Now she's chilling. With the blanket. Here we go. Oh, there she goes. Oh, yeah. She's so cool. She's mad. She's so sweet. Yeah. Picking up, dressing all at the same time, no posters.
So again, for those of you that were just listening, that was a man who I believe has chosen to identify as a woman, laying down in a hospital bed as if he just gave birth. and they were handing over his now baby to him. It is one of the most heartbreaking videos to watch. You see the videos when the mom gets to hold her baby for the first time, and you just see that immediate connection, almost like you see a peace come amongst the child when they hit their mother's chest. And you see, even when you see a 3-month-old, a 4-month-old, when they're with their mom and the mom's introducing the baby to their friends, there's looking at the baby, but there's a connection. You see the baby just look at the mom in awe. And that's not what we saw in this video at all. So Katy, I'd love to get your reaction and thoughts to that.
Yeah, what you have is a man who is completely camera ready. I mean, I would not doubt that this was many surrogate pregnancies are C-section pregnancies, oftentimes because the commissioning parents, it's according to their schedule, not the baby's schedule. So this guy came totally ready, like full makeup, probably fake eyelashes, manicured nails, braids. And the saddest part of this video, what you can't see if you're just listening, is that you've got this wailing child, like all babies wail after they are born. And then typically it's like what you said, Sophia. I mean, I've been a birth mother, 3 times now, and there's always wailing. There's always distress for the child. And then you always put the baby on the mom's chest and there's peace, because that is the only thing that the baby knows. And what you see in this video is what is an underweight child, because very often surrogate pregnancies don't make it to full term. And this child is distressed, crying, and looking for that peace, looking for what every baby wants the moment that they are born. And he's instead put on the hairy chest of a man who is so much more concerned about pleasing the camera than meeting the child's needs. And the baby does end up calming down in the sense of, it looks like the baby's having a hard time getting enough breath, and you see the child just chin quivering. It is so obvious that this child is searching for the thing that is going to give them comfort, the only thing that they know. Even if this guy is the biological father of the child, he is just one of 8 billion strangers to the kid at this moment. The only thing the baby wants is the mother in whose body he gestated for 9.5 months. And you can see that it's very clear that this baby is going to carry the emotional load for that grown man and not the other way around.
That's the reality of what we're seeing happen here. And again, you talked about in the beginning, people want to touch on, well, this is just helping out a woman in need, a woman who can't get pregnant. This is what that is. No, that video is truly the epitome of what this is, the harm it's doing to children. But surrogacy, more so IVF, has been coming up. A lot of people, again, didn't even know about what it was, just kind of knew it was something to help with fertility, didn't know how these things worked until back in February with the Alabama hearing. And that happened, and all of a sudden, every person lost their mind. People didn't even know what the case was, what the result of the case was, how any of this came to be. People just started shouting that women's rights were again being taken away. We unfortunately even saw Republicans who are supposed to actually maybe do better on research and know what they're talking about, just completely losing, get it wrong on this issue. And everyone just started going crazy that all of a sudden IVF was going to be banned. I know, like you said, with California Family Council, you did a longer in-depth interview about the situation, but I just know there's a lot of people, especially my age, that still just think all of a sudden Alabama banned IVF and that they hate women, and that's the end of the story. So can we kind of run through briefly what happened there?
Yeah, what happened is there were embryos that were in frozen storage in a fertility clinic in Alabama, and they were accidentally destroyed. And 3 parents sued under the wrongful death claim, saying they killed our children. And the Alabama Supreme Court said, you are right, they did. You can sue them. And the big fertility clinic, big fertility industry said, wait a second. If you are going to consider these frozen embryos children, we can't do business in this state. So that actually tells you everything that you need to know about big fertility's business practice. They would rather shut their doors than conduct business in a way that does not destroy little embryonic life. And it's for the exact same reasons that I just stated at the beginning of this podcast. Like, 93 to 97% of lab-created babies won't be born alive. The entire business model is built upon designing, destroying, discarding, and donating little babies that are maybe 3 to 5 day old. And then if they donate them to research, maybe they'll let them get to be 14 days old as they tinker with their little bodies and try to figure out, ironically, how to improve fertility services in the future. And so what that told us is they weren't saying we're going to ban IVF. They're just saying you can't destroy children in the process of IVF. And that was enough for the fertility industry to say we can't do business here anymore.
Exactly where it goes to show they would rather shut their doors, like you said, than find any way to do it with some kind of morality. But that was perfect. That was like the great 2-minute explanation of what went down there. So hopefully all of you that are listening, if you weren't aware of that, we'll put some more information in the comment section and let people know where to find more information about that. But that's really what went down in Alabama. And lastly, I want to wrap up with, I kind of let the listeners know a little bit about them before us, but I wanted to wrap up with why you decided to start that. I also think it's a powerful story that you kind of started it anonymously at first, and then now you're doing big things and traveling the world to stand up for the rights of children. So I'd love just to hear from you a little bit more about them before us.
Yeah, the reason I started it is because we thankfully have hundreds of organizations defending children's right to life, and that's exactly as it should be. That is our primary human right. If you don't do that, you don't get anything. And thankfully, we have had very faithful people in organizations defending children's right to life for 50 years. There was nobody defending children's rights to their mother and father. And this is the secondary child right, beyond their securing their existence. Defending children's right to their mother and father secures children's thriving. And there are massive for-profit organizations, from Big Fertility to, honestly, the entire Democrat Party, to major NGOs like Human Rights Campaign, that are seeking to obliterate children's connections to their mother and father, oftentimes in the name of progress or tolerance or non-discrimination. And nobody was formally defending kids. So that is what we seek to do at Them Before Us. Take the same child-centric mentality of pro-life work into marriage and family. I often say, if anti-abortion work is children's rights 1.0, marriage and family needs to be children's rights 2.0. And I did start this anonymously. I started writing about the importance of mothers and fathers and why marriage is a matter of justice for children on an anonymous blog, because I am a chicken, because I'm afraid of what these people will do to you. And I just thought I'll just get in my little dark corner of the internet and start to write about not only the natural law case for traditional marriage, but also why Christians need to both stand firm on God's design for sex and marriage and love their LGBT family and friends well. And then I was outed by a very large gay blogger who doxed members of my church to try to silence me, and ended up revealing my identity, which meant that I could, lead workshops at the United Nations and write amicus briefs to the Supreme Court, and now travel across the country and across the globe advocating on behalf of children. And I'm on, the advisory board for Jordan Peterson's new project, the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, collaborating with Focus on the Family on $1 million documentary on the importance of children's rights to their mother and father. I mean, it was such a, what the enemy means for evil kind of situation. He just meant to silence me, and it enlarged our platform 100-fold.
That's amazing. That it reminds me of, I've just been studying a little bit on Esther lately, and Esther 4:14, I think it's really the Bible verse that every Christian girly knows. And I've always just thought of it as the verse as for such a time as this. And when I was recently going through it and rereading it, I think we kind of missed the beginning of the verse. The beginning of the verse, Mordecai tells her, hey, if you don't do this, the Jews will still be set free by someone else. And that just hit me that not only are we here for such a time as this, but if you feel called by God to do something, and you choose to not do it, he's still going to get his will done. He doesn't need us. He uses us. And I just think that it just so embodies who you are, Katy. I mean, God called you to do something, you did it, and you're here for such a time as this. And like you said, you started anonymously, and now here you are doing all these things and really making a difference. And I'm so grateful for all you're doing. But with that, is there any last thing you would like to say and we'll get into how people can find you, but any last thing for the listeners to hear?
Well, just that the California Family Council is amazing and you should support them. You should share this podcast, but you should donate to them. I mean, the truth is that they are spearheading and a lot of the good work that's being done in California, and they're holding the line on a lot of things that you may not be able to see. You are blessed. You are blessed to have them in your state. And honestly, you should get stronger. They should get stronger. You Christians and conservatives should overtake this state. Like, I think that the fruits are ripe with harvest. But you guys need to join forces and get very, very serious. And the California Family Council is the organization to support if that's what you're after.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Katy. And best way for people to find more from you and your organization.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. That's where I'm the most active, @advo_Katy. Then Before Us is on Instagram. I'm on Instagram too, but I don't run it because I think Instagram is like the most counterintuitive social media platform ever, and it just makes me crazy. We're on Facebook, but the best thing you can do is go to thembeforeus.com, subscribe to our newsletter. We have so many projects that are not just playing defense, but going on offense, and you should know about them and stay connected. And I've got a new book coming out in September that is going to blow everybody's mind. I can't wait. It's called Pro-Child Politics. And it's kind of taking this Them Before Us philosophy and applying it to every major political issue that we're facing today. So come to thembeforeus.com and subscribe and stay connected to us.
Amazing. And I will put all of that information on the podcast comments so all of you guys can find Katy and Them Before Us, and then make sure to get that book in September. Is there going to be a pre-order, or is it September? It'll just be available everywhere.
Hopefully in June, we're going to have it up on Amazon.
Amazing. Okay. Well, once I see that, I'll also make sure to let the followers know. We'll put it on the Instagram stories, Twitter, all of that so they can pre-order.
Great.
But Katy, thank you so much. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Good to be with you.